For 13 years, while the rest of the world watched their utility rates double, my bill has stayed zero. And I'm going to explain to you exactly how that happened and how you can do it too. Living on a ranch, completely off-grid, sounds like a dream. And it is for the most part. I mean, it can be, because that's why I did it in the first place. But after more than a decade of living it, there is a lot of do's, a lot of don'ts, and even total confusion about how it's done. And I'm going to explain all of it. Where we get water, how do we deal with sewage, what internet do I use, even how to buy land, and how does a normal person pull this off for 5K or less instead of dropping 100 grand like I did. 13 plus years of off-grid lessons, some of it learned the hard way. All right, let's get into it. All right, now each one of these topics definitely deserves its own video. There is just way too much information to kind of squeeze in to really cover it all. I'm about to drop a ton of knowledge. If you haven't liked this video already, do it. That way you'll come back to it. It'll be in your like list and you can come back to it for reference. Also, don't forget to subscribe. But we're going to start out by going through each one of these topics. And I think the best way to do it is that I kind of went through and I grabbed some comments. And there was something like 30,000 comments in the last month alone. And so we try and read them all. And if I don't get to your comment and give it a thumbs up or heart, don't worry, I'm still seeing them, so keep commenting. But I grabbed a comment on each one of these topics, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm basically going to address that. And it's really going to help you with this whole concept of understanding exactly how we live off-grid and how to do it. So, all right, let's get started. The first one is from David Rudorfer, 3857. I'm just going to call you David. The comment is, shouldn't one try to find out about costs of electrical grid connection and costs for the off-grid alternative before purchasing the land, plus the same for costs of sourcing water, disposing of wastewater, getting internet connection, etc. Okay, that was a huge, question, big concern in the comments. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands of people said, hey, how come you didn't find out first? Well, there's two things. One, it didn't really matter. We bought the land and we were building the ranch regardless of the costs. So it didn't matter. Whether that was going to be power from the grid or whether it was going to be off-grid power or, living in a tent with no power, it didn't matter. It was going to happen. Now, there are some basic rules when you buy raw land and develop it. Before you can build like an actual structure, a permitted structure, in most municipalities, most counties, you have to have water and septic, at least here in Washington State where I am. And so you have to have drinkable water, potable water, and you have to have a place for septic, place for sewage to go. Those are the two main tenets. Those are requirements. Power is really optional. They don't really care about that. They'll allow you to live in the dark. They don't really care. So that should answer that question. That's why we didn't call. We already knew kind of like the basic costs, but we were shocked to find out that connecting to the grid was going to be anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 when we could build a fantastic off-grid alternative and never pay them a dime again. Much cheaper. So now the next question is water, right? That was another big concern in the comments. The question was, and this is from Swagatron QQ4LQ. So your power is off-grid, but what other aspects are off-grid, like water or food? Now I'm going to talk about water specifically because we're going to get to food a little bit later. In order to get a building permit, we had to have water first, which means you have to have it drilled, right? If you want a water well or some other type of water source. Now we live on a mountain where there's not particularly a lot of water. Even when we tell people that we built a ranch up on this particular mountain, people will comment and go, wow, you don't have any water up there. Well, that's true, right? So the ranch to the east of us, I want to say they had something like maybe 10, 12 gallons a minute from their drilled well. The ranch to the south of us, are you ready? Get this, a half a gallon a minute. A half a gallon in a minute. I'm serious. That's what they drilled and that's what they got. So we were a bit nervous about drilling for water. We were nervous. We called around to a couple of companies. One particular company in the valley said they wouldn't even drill up here unless we had it witched, right? So dowsing rods, walking around, witching. That's a weird thing to me. I'm not necessarily a believer of water witching, but weird. My neighbor who does do water witching, after this whole thing was done, came over to the ranch and I said, find my water line. And he did. Weird. Crazy. He did it. So it works. I don't know how it works. But anyway, I called a second water drilling company further up north. And on the phone call with them, they had this kind of phrase that they said, Loyal, there's two types of people. And they said there's people who believe in water witching, and then there's well drillers. And that made me laugh. And I said, why do you say that? And he goes, because we live in North America and water is ubiquitous here. He goes, there's very few places where there isn't water. If basically if you're not drilling deep enough, that's why you don't get water. He's like, there's water here. So they were very comfortable and they were very confident. They came in, they drilled, they found a lot of water. Our total bottom on the well is 319 feet. They were off by a foot when they were drilling. They thought they were going to be 320, but they were 319. And we hit a ton of water. We drilled through a bunch of medium, soft and medium rock into some really solid, what they called like a hard rock material. Put a good bottom on the well, and their testing equipment only measured 85 gallons a minute. And we maxed out their testing equipment, and there was water blowing in the air and running down the ranch. And they sent a picture of it when they were doing it. That cost of the well back then was about $10,000 or $11,000 to drill the well in total. Now remember, this was like 13, 14 years ago. And then of course, to put a pump in the well, we ended up going with a 5 horsepower 3-phase pump and controller. And I think that was probably about another $5,000 to have that controller and pump, set in the well. And so there's your costs, and that's how we have water up here. So we have water everywhere, and we've run water lines out across the ranch everywhere. And that's how that's done. Now, I know this water section's long, but stick with me. This video is going to be a good size, healthy video, which there should be chapter markers so you can kind of jump through the things that you're interested in. When you live off grid, if something fails, like power, it goes out, my water is in the ground. Now, we were lucky that we had a static level of water at about 27 feet. And what that means, that static level, means that if I was to pull the top off the well, off the casing, water's only 27 feet down, which that's fantastic. I mean, that's a good solid amount of water. In the event that we lose power, we would have no water. So I actually built the system with a separate water building. And we use the pump in the well to pump water up and irrigate the ranch, but also it feeds a 2,500 gallon cistern inside that water building. And then there's a domestic water pump connected to that, which feeds the domestic side, the house, water faucets, things like that around the house and the yard. Now, we did that for the sole purpose of if there was an emergency and we lost all power, whether summer or winter, we have 2,500 gallons of potable water already above ground that we could use while we're fixing that emergency. It's about probably 8 to 10 feet above the house, which means we would get water flow. It just wouldn't be a lot. Food. Now, this comment is from Shay Lupkus. I hope I'm saying that right. How much of your own food are you producing? How are you getting your own water? How many of your vehicles and machines rely on the same grid you made? And how many parts can you replace with ones made from your 3D printer? I love sustainable practices. Well, that's awesome because I love this question. I actually like the way that you threw the 3D printing in there. If you don't know, I've been a 3D printing content creator for a really long time, and I'm actually inside of this studio, and there's an entire wall of filament up there, and there are hundreds of 3D printers here, and something like 10 to 15 to 20,000 spools of filament. I absolutely love 3D printing. It's a big part of my life. To answer your question about producing food, so we're like any other family, I guess, right? We're 25 minutes away from a Walmart. So we're not out in the middle of nowhere. We're not suffering. We're not struggling. We have a garden like anyone else, about a half acre to about 1 acre of garden, depending on how much energy we kind of have in the spring to build it out. Things that do well up here: potatoes do well, radishes do well, corn, obviously all the other little plants. But so we have a pretty healthy garden. We have had some issues the last couple of years with rodents. So we have pocket gophers have really done some damage the last couple of years, and deer, of course, deer are everywhere. And then we had pigs, and they weren't even our pigs. Somebody let their pigs out and their goats out, and they came through one year and they destroyed our garden. Cows, not our cows. Our cows are in a pasture. We're in a pasture. This was neighboring ranches. Their cows got through fence, came through, destroyed our garden one year. It's terrible. But anyway, yeah, so that's how that's done. And actually, we have a whole series of videos that we're going to be producing that really talk about the different aspects of the ranch and independence and freedom and 3D printers. So I don't really want to get into how 3D printing works on the ranch and why it's a good fit for independence, because those videos will answer all of that for you. Here we go, septic. Now this is a funny one. This is from Sloop 24. What did you do for water and sewage? So I'm only going to talk about sewage in this because we addressed water already. Sewage. Have to have sewage before you can get a building permit. Now, I actually have a very long, healthy, complicated story on sewage, and I'm going to give it to you as fast as possible, all right? So if you don't want to hear this, you can skip it and you go to the next section. But if you want to hear how corrupt government is, then you're going to want to stick around right here for this story. You have to have a septic system and a way to deal with sewage before you can get your building permit. So we had the well drilled. We got the water tested. That's good. They approved that. I then had a family friend in the valley, and he's an engineer. He's a civil engineer. And he knew me when I was in diapers. I went to him and said, hey, listen, I need you to come up here and design me a septic system on this mountain. And he said, sure, not a problem. So he and I paid him for it. It's his business. He came up on the mountain. I took my backhoe out around the ranch and we dug tons of holes. He was looking down in there, checking the dirt, looking for certain depths all over the ranch, knew where we were going to put the house. We did that. We left a hole open. He thinks he found an idea design that would work. We called down to the health inspector at the health department, had them come up. This guy came up, classic government, bureaucratic type, annoyed, usually sits behind a desk, doesn't like to be out in the field. It was raining that day. Again, he was annoyed. He was just really frustrated. Water kept getting on his glasses. He didn't want to get out of his car. I'm frustrated because I'm paying for permits. I'm paying for all of this. And then I get some government guy that doesn't even want to be there. He doesn't want to get his shoes dirty. He looked in the hole, looked around, left. We assumed everything would be okay. Later on, we get an email, and the email says, hey, we're not going to let you have gravity septic system, which is really frustrating because ranch to the north, ranch to the east, ranch to the south, they have gravity septic systems. This guy wouldn't let us have it. And what that means is you basically have your tanks, your vaults that sit in the ground. Affluent, rises up in those tanks. It goes over and then doses out into the ground with no power under gravity. A lot of domestic systems down in the valley would be that way. He said no, and he wanted a mound system, is just what they call it. And it's unimportant. So my engineer, super smart guy. In fact, he designed all of the septic systems in the valley for the parks. All of the public restrooms in the parks, those massive septic systems for public restrooms, he designed. He came up with a fantastic solution. It's very complicated, very expensive, but he came up with this amazing system to be able to handle 8 to 10 bedrooms. He submitted it to the health department. The health department came back and ultimately said, no, we don't like it. And my civil engineer, right, the guy I paid, said, well, I'm sorry that you don't like it, but that's not your job. He's like, I'm a civil engineer, which means my education, my stamp, I'm telling you as an engineer, this works. The health department doesn't get to choose whether or not they like it or not. It's your job just to sign it off. I know that's arrogant. I know it is. And I'm probably betting he could have said it a better way. But ultimately, the health department, even though the engineer's in the right, the health department decided they were going to punish me. And they ignored us for days. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. It was terrible. I even went in there in person to try and meet with them, and they wouldn't even let me speak to them. So anyway, I called down to the building department, and I said, hey, listen, I can't get my health department permit. And they were frustrated because they said, Loyal, we want you to build. We want you to pay taxes. I got somebody high up in the building department, and they said, hey, we have nothing to do with the health department, but we'll call over and see what we can do. Now, mind you, this is months and months and months of time, sending emails, making phone calls, getting no responses. They were completely ignoring us. The building season on this mountain is passing. Sometimes we get 7 or 8 months of snow on the ground. So we are losing that window to build that year. And finally, the building department, they did me a favor. They called over, weren't sure if they could get anything done. And magically, an hour later, my email dings and it's the permit. It's approved. Very frustrating. So I was not happy, but we got the permits. Now, here's the part where I said they punished me. Okay? And I know this is a long story. Maybe this deserves a whole separate video. I don't know. The health inspector decided he was going to try and punish me. He put on the permit that each one of those lines, it was 30 lines on the septic system, had to have an inspection port at each end of the line, an added cost. So 60-something inspection ports installed. Then he put on the permit that I was required to have an annual inspection of each of those ports, which means I'd have to pay for that. I'd have to pay a contractor to come up every single year. I was frustrated. I called back my engineer, said, what's going on? What does this mean? He just laughed. He said, Loyal, you got your permit. That's all you care about. Now you can start building. That is not enforceable. He doesn't even have the authority to put that on your permit. It's meaningless. It's just a classic government health inspector throwing a tantrum. I go, all right. So we started building. Anyway, so that is the story about septic. We have a traditional septic system. We ended up going with a contractor. He came up, installed the vaults, put the lines in. It has a UV filter on it, has multiple pumps, controller. It's somewhat fancy and sophisticated, but it works very well. And so, yeah, traditional septic, just like you'd have in a regular home anywhere else. From Obsessed Lime, what has been your network solution? Running lines or just wireless options like Starlink? Yes, we have full internet. We actually have a lot of internet here. Originally, when we came up here on the mountain, we called down to the local valley and they had an option called Sky-Fi, is what they called it. It was a wireless fiber protocol. And it's a point-to-point system. Sent a guy up here with binoculars. He pointed up towards the top of the mountain and found a dish up there. They also looked out to the south of us and found another dish there. They just lined them up, wireless, fiber protocol, dish to dish, down to the valley, fast internet. We had some issues with that. It was the kind of a local valley thing, some latency kind of problems. So we ended up several years ago getting in on the beta of Starlink when it first was kind of announced, and we were in an area where they wanted to send it, and it's been fantastic ever since. We actually have two. We have a Starlink dish on the house, and then we have a second Starlink dish here for the studio. There's no reason for that. I mean, the whole network is connected, but it's mostly as a redundancy. If one of the dishes is down or not working, or if I'm doing a lot of bandwidth uploading, downloading, and the kids are playing PlayStation, things like that, it's just not affected. But Starlink is fantastic. We get sometimes 350 plus megabit down, and we'll get anywhere from 30, 50 to 80 to 100 megabit up. So yeah, Starlink internet is how we do all this, and it works incredibly well. Even all our live streams are done with Starlink. From Evans7771, over the last 10 years, have the maintenance costs been lower than what you have paid to the power grid? Trying to understand if it will pay for itself over time. I know that most solar setups, that's the case, but this is a whole power utility setup. Okay. This question or the comment is about return on investment. And I'm going to say right here that you don't live off grid, at least most people don't, and at least I didn't, to save money. If you're trying to compare the cost of what it would be to live in town versus to live rural and off grid, you're probably in it for the wrong reason. There are way more valuable aspects to living off grid and being independent and having this freedom than just comparing it dollar for dollar. The ROI on a lesser expensive system is absolutely there. On my $100,000 power system, not so much. In fact, we're actually going to be doing a video here shortly. We're actually going to tear out my entire power system and battery and replace it with new technology. Because remember, mine's over a decade old, right? So things have changed. Battery technology is better. Systems are lesser expensive. They're more capable, better software. So yeah, we'll do a whole video on that. If you're trying to live off grid or go off grid, you're not doing it to save money. Unless you're going to live in a tent. Yeah, I love the name. Super Compooper. That's funny. Can you actually estimate the cost of maintenance and time to maintain? I'm sure in 10 years, you've had to replace battery packs or something, right? Yes, the battery for our off-grid system was the most expensive component, right? So the power system basically broke down to, you have a building, right? A power building, and that was included in that $100,000 cost that I mentioned in a previous video. The battery, the electrical component side, the mechanical side, which is the John Deere turbo diesel generator, and then of course you have the solar panels, wind turbines, and things like that. But the battery itself was about $22,000 to $25,000. It weighs like 6,000 pounds. It's huge. It's monstrous. And yes, those age over about 10 years. You have to replace them. So ours is due to be replaced. It's still functioning, but obviously it's not at full 100% capacity. And so that's why we're even looking at over the next like maybe 6 months to a year, a couple of years, we're just going to replace it with newer technology. It's going to be a lot less expensive as well. Maintenance, yes, we did have a couple of cells die. We ordered new cells. They weigh like 225 pounds each cell, 2.2 volts. And I think they were about $250 maybe, or $350 a cell, and then about $100 to ship them, and they'd show up freight. Yeah, and so we replaced a couple of those over the years as a cell failed for whatever reason. Yeah, that's just part of maintenance. Maintenance is a part of it. When you're your own power grid, I'm the power guy. So I have to be aware of it. Is it Nabil 97NM? Nabil? Dear Mr. Moses, love it. Be sure to install security camera and self-defense arrangements. They will not let you live freely, and it scare them to death if everyone starts doing it. Kindly protect yourself, and we need people like you. Hope this helps. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you being concerned about my family and our safety and security. We are rural. We're out here. Now, we're not alone 100% on top of a mountain. There are other ranches around us. But what's important to understand is that this is a ranch. Living rural, firearms are a part of life. And they are everywhere here, and everyone knows how to use them. Yeah, you don't want to show up on a mountain, on a ranch, or someone's rural land uninvited. Don't do that. The tech is cheap now. So cameras are everywhere, all over the ranch. They alert, they upload to a cloud. So that stuff is pretty simple. We can look at any camera. It does that all for us. It'll let us know if vehicles are there, if people are there, if animals are there. It's pretty fantastic stuff, the technology now. And also there's something that we use that not a lot of people know about. They're called annunciators. And those are really important on a ranch, right? So we have different roads, we have different gates, we have different places. We have between buildings on different sides of buildings on the ranch where nobody should ever be or things shouldn't be. Different ingresses and egresses. We have annunciators. And then those send a wireless signal back to the home station. And that home station makes different tones and sounds depending on which annunciator is tripped. And so those are super helpful for knowing when someone comes in to the ranch on a road that they shouldn't come in. And it'll alert us, and we immediately go, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. Plus, if anybody shows up at front gates, or if anybody somehow gets onto the ranch and is wandering around, they'll trip an annunciator. Now, do animals do it too? Yeah, they do. So deer will trip the annunciators, but we've actually found that deer, for the most part, they're very predictable. They kind of follow their own kind of migration route as they move through the ranch. That's how the annunciators work, if that makes sense. So, and then another big one, light. Lots of light. Lights are inexpensive now, so just put light everywhere, right? They don't take much power. And a lot of them are even solar powered. So yeah, light things up. You can see at night, and everything's good. Oh, dogs. Dogs are fantastic. Dogs are good. They're great security alarms. They hear everything. They see everything. Horses are fantastic. They see and hear things and get unsettled and make noise. And then, of course, we have neighbors. Everybody on the mountain is watching out for everybody. Everybody recognizes vehicles coming down roads, recognize people walking down roads. People stop, people check. People are constantly taking pictures and recording plates and vehicles. It's just a community type thing. So yeah, safety and security is very important. Now let's move on to freedom. All right. So this question or comment is from Greg Ridge 799. All right, Greg. Truest statement I have heard in a long time. And I believe this is a quote from me in my previous video on my off-grid power system. Freedom isn't theoretical, it's engineered. Dependency is easy, but it comes with shackles that limit you. Kudos to a man willing to rely on his own sweat and ingenuity. Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Living off-grid is fantastic, or we wouldn't have done it, right? But it's also not what you see on TV and in YouTube channels. It's not traditionally what people have made you believe off-grid living is like. My wife and I watched a lot of off-grid shows back in the very beginning when we started to look at land and things like that because we were considering it. And we watched people on these, I don't know, like Discovery Channel or maybe, I don't know, Learning Channel, I don't know, one of those things. We watched people struggle, right? So we watched them have composting toilets and using their gray water on their garden. By the way, ew. Gray water is gross. Gray water is your sink water, or your spit, toothpaste, whatever. If you've ever had like travel trailers, fifth wheels, things like that, gray water is gross. It goes sour so fast. I don't know if I want that on my vegetables. But anyway, you do you. But the reusing gray water and composting toilets and struggling to survive, using candles at night, shutting lights off when they're not using them, things like that. That's not really how off-grid living is. We are completely off-grid. I'm in a studio right now, and there are, I don't know if you can tell, there are 8 lights on me. There are 8 lights. Here, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 lights on me, right? My wife is sitting over here in another room in the studio. She's working on a computer. I've got my editing desk over here and I have complete sets. My children are in the house, which is about 200 feet this way, and they're playing on PlayStations, right? And there's televisions on. The whole house is operating. And it's not as much power as people think. So you don't have to struggle. You don't have to sacrifice in order to live off grid. Now, I will say, and people are going to put this in the comments, so let me jump ahead of that. They're going to say, oh yeah, well, it's money. If you have the money, then you don't have to struggle. Yes and no, because we're about to get to that at the end of this video, where I'm going to talk to you about the actual costs and how you can do it much cheaper. So anyway, I don't really put a dollar value on freedom, because freedom is what you make of it and it's what you want. And if ultimately you want the freedom to step out in your yard and have no one around and not be looking at anyone, what's that worth? So now we're going to move from freedom, we're going to move on to buying land. This is a big section, okay? And then we're going to talk about getting cheap power, right? Thalilis, VR14333. Sorry if I'm butchering that, I don't know. The comment was, my parents are looking for some land in the US. You should totally help us. How you did it, or give some advice. Okay, you heard me say I'm 25 minutes from a Walmart. Okay, I have a rule. If you want to buy inexpensive land, there's a couple things here. One, get yourself away from a Walmart. If you are 30 minutes from a Walmart or more, the land drops significantly in price, dramatically. A lot of people want to live close to town. Closer you are to town, the more expensive the land is. So if you're shopping or wanting to live on a budget or as inexpensive as possible, then it's not easy. Because if it were easy, right, everyone else would do it. Okay, so get away from a Walmart by 30 minutes. Places to shop, to look for land in your local area, find local real estate agents. Their websites, they'll have rural or raw land listed on those websites. Start looking there. Then, of course, there's Craigslist. Fantastic resource for looking for land. So those will be places that are already on real estate as well. But also, Craigslist will have owner contracts. And this is really important. A bank does not traditionally lend money for raw land, right? There are some that will, but traditionally that just doesn't happen. So you're going to have to pay cash for the land or owner contract. Now, up here on this mountain, there are a lot of landowners, right? And these people have owned the land for 100 years, their families, and they own hundreds of thousands of acres. And there are parcels of land that they're willing to sell to people under owner contract. And you'd say, why? Well, because where you're trying to buy land and you want to live rural and you want to have that freedom and that space, understand that's what those people wanted too. That's what they have been doing. So those people get you. They understand you. They believe in the same things. And so if you can call them and talk to them, a lot of times they'll speak to you. A lot of times they'll help you. So there's even land that's somewhat close to us where I'll tell you this story really quick. It's a good story. A person bought like 40 acres of land, 2 parcels, from a long-time, large landowner up here on this mountain. And they paid for that land. They worked out a contract. They were paying monthly on 2 parcels. And they got a little behind. Now, according to the contract, that landowner, he's well within his rights to cancel, keep the money, and sell that land to someone else. But they're not like that. They literally called him up on the phone and said, hey, listen, you haven't made payments in a long time. How about this, bud? You've made enough payments on both parcels. If we take the money from both parcels, roll it into one, I'll meet you down at the courthouse and we'll sign that parcel over to you. And then we'll just put this one back up for sale. So your money's not wasted. That's a fantastic solution. And what a great group of people to do that. So his land, he ended up getting it, at least one parcel, and the other land goes back up on the market. So think about that. There's plenty of places to get land. Now, price-wise, I bought my land a long time ago. I ended up talking to a couple that lived in Spokane that's east of me. They bought land here thinking one day this mountain was going to blow up and get really expensive. And so then finally they put the land up for sale. They didn't want to deal with anything. I lowballed them. I mean, I offered like basically 20%, and and they were just so desperate to just walk away from the land. They wanted nothing to do with it anymore, and so they took it. I got this land pretty darn inexpensive, but that was a long time ago. But I would say, depending on where you're at, there are places where you can buy land as low as $2, $3, $4, $5,000 dollars an acre. It is possible. Look for it. You'll find it, right? So and I would say if you're not looking for big land, if you're not looking for 50 or 40, 60, 80, 100, 20, 200 acres of land, you can live very comfortably on 5. You can live very comfortably on 10, 20 and larger is fine. Sorry, these questions are big. A lot of answers. I'm trying to answer all of this and kind of do this as casual as I can. So I hope you're enjoying the video, and thanks for making it this far. Again, if you haven't done it, hit that like button and hit the subscribe. We're going to do more of this. I think that this is kind of like a topic that's really struck a lot of people. And I don't know, it seems like in recent times, a lot of people are kind of feeling that weight and that pressure of the government, and they just want a place to go. So now we're going to talk about cheap power. And this comment is from, I think it's Wiley's Shenanigans. And the comment is, if only we all had a 100K to be independent of utility companies. Okay, I got it. From my other video, a lot of people saw that as a barrier to entry. And they said, it's great that you live that way, but we're never going to be able to live like that because we don't have $100,000. I get it. And that's not the way that video was meant to be. And I think the majority of people understood that video was inspirational. But I understand. So I'm going to explain a couple of things. You don't have to have the system I had. 1. 2, it doesn't cost that anymore. I was telling you what it cost me 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago. The systems now and the technology now is far less expensive, far more capable, and more easily accessible. So there are companies out there like Anchor and EcoFlow and even Blue Yeti, not sponsored, and I'll have those links in the description for the different systems that we talk about. But new battery technology is actually what's changed all this. They've enabled my battery, which is like 7 feet tall and weighs 6,000 pounds and is anchored and bolted to the ground. These things are now portable. You can have as much power and more power than what I have, and it's portable. You can really, literally roll them around like suitcases, stack them up, and plug them in. Everything is much cheaper. Now you're going to say, how much cheaper? For $500 to $1,000, you can absolutely become off-grid. Now you won't have a lot of power, but you will be off-grid. You'll have a small battery, you'll have an inverter that's limited on the amount of watts that it can do, and you'll have maybe some solar panels included in that 1,000 kind of mark. And like I said, I'm going to put links down below. Go to these websites, go look. Also, because we're going to be replacing our entire power system soon, including the battery, inverters, the technology, hey, if you're one of these companies, hit me up so I can use it and then make content on it. For $1,500, or I should say for $1,000 or less, you get that technology, but you're going to be limited on power, right? So you're going to have a battery bank that's not going to really last you overnight unless you shut everything off. During the day when there's sun, you'll run your 500 to 1,000 watts, things like that. So that's kind of like a emergency type power system. Getting from $2,500 up to about $5,000, well, now you're off grid. Now the solutions are much better. Now you have enough power to last you through a night, have a refrigerator that's plugged in all the time. And I mean a domestic one, like not a small cooler. I'm talking like my Samsung refrigerator in the house. Full refrigerator, you have televisions, you have Apple TVs, you have, I don't care, whatever, toasters, whatever it is. All of that will absolutely work on a system like that. And then it'll recharge the next day on solar panels. At night, you're not going to be wanting to run your toaster. You're not going to be wanting to run your microwave at night, maybe just for maybe a minute or two at the most. But during the day, you'll have all that power that you want. Now, you won't be able to run electric dryers or strike an arc on a welder, but you'll have power. Now, for $5,000 to $10,000, now you're good. That's it. You can run a full home on that. So up to $10,000, you have all of the power that you need. You will have all of your televisions, computers, laptops, internet, you name it, you will have your entire house. You'll use the toaster when you want, you use the microwave when you want, and you won't even be concerned, you won't even think about it at all. It's enough battery power to make you last all the way through the night, not even a concern for that much money. Now, if you want to strike an arc on a welder and you want to run big underground well pumps, then you have to go a little bit bigger. So $10,000 will run that well pump underground, but you're not going to be running that well pump all the time. You're going to want not an electric water heater. You're going to want probably a water heater that's propane, or heat pump water heater would be the best solution there. But if you go all the way up to about $15,000 to $20,000, well, now you can be at a system like mine where you can strike an arc on a welder. It'll be able to handle that no problem. It'll be able to start a generator automatically and feed power to the battery bank, and also run the welder. So yeah, so $20,000. So like I said, go into the comments, or I'm sorry, go into the description, and I'll have links to that. Yeah, and I hope that answers the questions that you had. Don't be afraid to drop more comments and ask questions. I'm here to answer, and we will be doing, like I said, videos on all of these topics. Now, again, if you enjoyed this and you want me to talk more about some of these specific topics and go into more detail in those videos, let me know in the comments below. I appreciate it. Freedom doesn't have a price tag. It really doesn't. And I would caution you to not put a price tag on your freedom. I don't, and I won't. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.